All right, we ready?
Yes.
Ready.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for listening to Can You Repeat That podcast? We're your hosts. My name is Leslee.
My name's Chantelle.
And I am Atlas.
Honestly, I forget how good our intro music is until I have to edit it in here.
It's so good.
It's beautiful. All right, have y'all ever heard of a man named Michael Malloy?
Not once.
Atlas?
I would be surprised if Atlas hasn't.
You know, I would be surprised if he has because I've only heard this covered one time on another podcast called And That's Why We Drink. And it's really stuck with me since then because it's so crazy just the amount of things that happened to this man.
Oh, okay.
No, Michael Malroy is not a familiar name to me. Oh, Iron Mike?
Malloy.
Mike the Durable? Lived
my
in New York
gosh.
City in the 1920s. He was a firefighter.
How do you know so many things, Atlas?
That brain be braining at all times.
Part of me really thinks that you have Google up and you're searching everything I say. But I know you don't because I would hear your keys every single time.
Yeah, like I told you before, my head is filled with useless knowledge that is useful to nobody on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, well, maybe I'll tell you something that you didn't know before.
See, that's the thing, is I've known about the things you talked about each time, but you always do know things that I didn't. So I always learn something new, and it's fun.
Well, that makes me feel better then. So, my sources for this episode are the Smithsonian Magazine, Sam O'Nella Academy on YouTube, All That's Interesting, and That's Why We Drink. Although I haven't listened to that episode recently at all, I'm definitely giving them credit because I never heard it prior to then. With that being said, our story today focuses on one man with an iron stomach, Michael Malloy. Just a warning that this story has a lot of names involved, and I'll do my best to keep this easy to follow. Let's go back in time to New York City, 1932, at the start of the Great Depression. Malloy, an Irishman with little to no known information about him, was a firefighter and a stationary engineer, like Atlas had said. I swear I included the fact that he was of Irish descent in here for a reason, so just hang on and I'll get to that. He fell down on his luck and lost his job, and aside from occasionally doing odd jobs here and there, he spent most of his time at local speakeasies, drinking the days away. He had no familial ties in the States and no friends from what I have read. One of the bars Malloy frequented was named The Mermaid, belonging to Tony Marino, age 27. Mr. Marino was getting pretty tired of Malloy coming in daily, opening tabs, rarely ever paying them off, harassing the other customers, and passing out in the bar. So while ranting to his friends, Francis Pasqua and Daniel Kreisberg, they started, let's say, problem solving. Together, they came up with a plan to drink Malloy to death. He was already known as a neighborhood drunk, no family or friends to miss him, and as far as they were concerned, he already had a foot in the grave. At this time, there were a ton of alcohol-related deaths due to the prohibition, so it would be something they could easily pull off. At least they thought. Marino was no saint and loved his and other people's money. The previous year, Marino had become friends with a homeless woman named Maybelle Carson, convinced her to pull out a life insurance policy of $2,000 and name him as the beneficiary. On a freezing night, he force-fed her alcohol, stripped her of her clothing, covered the sheets and mattress with ice water, and put her bed underneath an open window. This caused her to pass away due to hypothermia.
Oh no, not hypothermia again.
I know, it doesn't matter what story we cover, it just goes full circle back to hypothermia. Anywho, the medical examiner listed her cause of death as bronchial pneumonia, and Tony Marino was able to collect the money from her life insurance. So they decided to do the same thing with Malloy. In my research, it was a little confusing as to who actually took out the life insurance policies on Malloy initially, but it was either Marino or Pasqua, and they didn't take out one life insurance policy or two, but three. They named the bar's bartender, Joseph Murphy, as Malloy's brother and the sole beneficiary to all 3 life insurance policies.
What a scandal.
Now, it's important to note that even though they expected him to kick the bucket, haha, no pun intended, go listen to our last episode.
Zing!
I'm sorry, I could not pass up on the opportunity. Anywho, so although they expected him to pass away pretty quickly, they were still paying on all 3 life insurance policies. So now there are 4 people working to actively end Malloy's life: Tony Marino, Francis Pesqua, Daniel Kreisberg, and now Joseph Murphy. The total payout for the life insurance policies combined would have been around $3,576 USD, which comes out to about $66,000 USD or $91,000 Canadian money in today's money. As long as Malloy's death was ruled an accidental death, that was an important part, because if it was ruled as a suicide or a murder, they wouldn't get as much of a payout as they would with accidental deaths. Again, they didn't think this would be hard considering he sat and drank all day every day.
Well, that's because, you see, in Ireland, the position of town drunk is a position of honor. I don't know.
I'm not someone who can do accents very well. That was a 10 out of 10 Atlas. I'm impressed. With the plan set in motion, all they needed to do now was befriend Malloy and offer him an open tab, and they did just that. I think we could all guess Malloy's reaction to hearing that he's no longer expected to pay for the alcohol and will be served as much as he can drink day after day. The group of 4 didn't think it was going to take too long for the drinking to catch up with him, but they were very, very wrong. Malloy started drinking immediately, and more than what should be possible for one person, but instead of passing out or getting sick after a while, he got up and said, "I'll see you tomorrow," and came back the next day. After a few days of drinking as much as he wanted and could, the group could see that this plan wasn't going to work out as they expected to, and that they needed a new plan. Do y'all have any guesses on what this new plan may be?
Poison the liquor.
Yep, you got it. They decided that instead of giving him his standard alcohol that he was drinking, they would start adding wood alcohol to his shots little at a time until eventually all he was drinking was wood alcohol and not liquor. For those who do not know what wood alcohol is, according to Google, wood alcohol is methanol and is manufactured from scrap wood and paper clippings. It's used as a source of fuel for propane or natural gas burners and as an antifreeze. To put this into perspective as to how dangerous wood alcohol is to consume, as little as 4% of wood alcohol is enough to make you go blind, and 2 shots, which I'm assuming would be 2 ounces or 59 mLs, would cause death in most people. So, if you're drinking a standard 12-ounce beer, you would only need 0.48 ounces of wood alcohol to cause you to go blind, and for my non-American friends, 12 ounces is 354 ml, and 4% of that is 14 mLs.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so it really doesn't take much to cause some serious damage in people.
Unless you're Iron Mike the Durable.
Yep, you're right. So by the end of the night, Malloy was drinking straight wood alcohol, and it seemed to have no visible effect on him until he collapsed on the floor. The group decided to wait on him and watch his breathing slow down, and eventually they heard a long breath, which they thought was the death rattle. But then Malloy began to snore, and then when he woke up a few hours later saying, quote, "Give me some of the old regular, my lad." This went on for a few nights, and they decided they needed something else to try to end Malloy's life. I could only find this in one source, so take it with a grain of salt, but apparently after drinking straight wood alcohol did not work, Joseph Murphy tried giving Malloy shots of horse liniment spiked with rat poison. Do either of you know what horse liniment is?
Yes. It's a medicated topical preparation. It's skin apple. The only reason I know that is when I was a kid, we lived on somewhere that had been a farm, and we used to, when we were trying to dig a garden, we dug up bottles of old horse liniment, like old glass bottles with the old labels on them.
Oh, that's really cool. But according to Schneider's The Ultimate Guide to Horse Liniment is a topical pain reliever that reduces swelling, stiffness, and soreness. But are we shocked to learn that that didn't even work? So now we're on to the next plan. Marino and his crew, who would be later known as the Murder Trust, decided they should soak some expired oysters in wood alcohol and feed it to him. Malloy said the oysters were so good that he actually told Marino he should open a restaurant.
Of
That's right.
course.
Yeah, at this point.
I'm starting to think he had no taste buds whatsoever.
You know, I would believe that because they fed him oysters because he liked oysters, but they fed him bad oysters. If you're an oyster fan, you know the difference between a good and a bad oyster, drunk or not.
So apparently he really likes seafood, so that's why they went with oysters. But whenever that didn't work, the next thing they tried was making a sardine sandwich out of expired rotten sardines mixed with metal shavings and glass, and of course soaked in wood alcohol. And when he finished that, he asked for another one.
Is there any possibility of, speaking of how we've, looked at Russians before, that this guy was maybe like the Irish reincarnation of Rasputin, maybe? I don't.
It's really funny that you say that because one of his nicknames was... I didn't write it down. 1 second. Rasputin of the Bronx.
Oh, wait, was it really?
Yes,
that's awesome.
That's so funny. So at this point, the group is getting pretty desperate to try to kill Malloy because remember, they are still paying for 3 life insurance policies, paying for all the wood alcohol, the food that they're using to try to kill him now, and then they're funding Malloy's drinking habits with all the alcohol that he is continuously drinking day after day.
I mean, in for a penny, in for a pound.
You'd think that after the first couple of attempts, they maybe would have taken this as a sign to not try to kill somebody, but at this point they were determined to make their money back. Desperate, they decided to use the same method that Marino had used to kill Mabel Carson. Malloy got super drunk and they took him outside, dumped him in the park, stripped him of all of his clothing, and doused him in cold water. This was sometime in the winter, so there was snow everywhere and it was very cold outside. They thought that there was no way that this wouldn't kill him. But when Marino clocked in at the speakeasy, he found Malloy in the basement half frozen. He had walked the half of a mile back in the snow with no clothes on, back to the bar, and persuaded Murphy to let him back in. He complained of a wee chill.
They can't stop my man Mike.
That's right, can't stop my man Mike. So, by this time, a few more people had joined in the murder trust, including petty criminals John McNally, Edward Tin Ear Smith, who, by the way, fun fact, his ear was prosthetic, but it was not made of tin, it was made of wax.
I mean, it's a little bit more intimidating than wax ear. See, that just makes you feel gross rather than like, oh god, it's tin ear, it's...
Yeah, I guess so. Ew, here comes wax ear. Okay, I can see it now. 10 years better. So the other two were Tony Bastone and Joseph Maglione. At this point, I'm willing to bet they would have made more money taking bets on what could have killed him or like have him eat something weird, it not faze him, and they make money that way. But I guess they were just really looking forward to this insurance payout, but I think there was a missed opportunity there.
Honestly, that's what I would have done at this point, is just start a pool. What will finally kill Mike?
Yeah, and I'm curious as to how many people knew what was going on by now, because I'm just mentioning a few people that are documented, but this had to be something that was well known and going around the bar or the town at least as to what was going on. But
it had to be like the neighborhood urban legend or something.
Had to be, right? Anywho, the group had a new idea, but John McNally had some reservations. Ultimately, they ended up paying a cab driver named Harry Green a total of $150 to run over Malloy with his cab. That's about $3,000 USD, $4,500 in Canadian in today's money.
I'd do it. I mean, no.
Well, we know Atlas's price now, everybody. So they got Malloy drunk, threw him in the cab, drove a few blocks down where Bastone and Murphy held Malloy in the middle of the road crucifixion style. The cab driver went about 50 miles an hour, 80 kilometers an hour, straight towards Malloy, and shockingly, he was able to dodge them twice, but was hit the third time. For good measure, they did back over him one time after hitting him, but they weren't able to actually get out and check to see if he had died, because there was a car headed towards them and they wanted to leave before being seen.
What awful hitmen. Not even checking to see.
That's what I'm saying. So, the next day, Malloy did not come into the speakeasy, and the group started calling around to try to find Malloy, who Joseph Murphy was calling his lost sibling. However, they couldn't find any information. There were no reports of any fatal accidents in the newspaper, and nobody matching descriptions of Malloy were at any nearby hospitals. 5 days later, Malloy returned to the speakeasy saying, "I sure am dying for a drink."
I can't keep my man Mike down.
That's right. And according to Malloy, all he could remember was the taste of whiskey, the cold night air, and the glare of rushing lights, then blackness. Next thing he knew, he woke up in a warm bed in a hospital and was trying to get back to the bar as quickly as he could. Shocking, right? After 7 months of liquor, wood alcohol, rotten food, and insurance policies to pay for, the group decided to take extreme measures to make sure Malloy would not survive the next attempt at his life. After a night of drinking, Malloy had passed out, and the group took him up to a room where they fixed a mask and a tube to his face, forcing him to inhale carbon monoxide. After 20 minutes, this did end up killing him.
Aw.
With Malloy now dead, all they needed was a death certificate to say this was an accident. They found a doctor and paid them to make a note that Malloy had died from low-bar pneumonia instead of carbon monoxide poisoning. Now with the death certificate, the group strolled up to the insurance company wanting their money. However, in order to actually get all of the money for the accidental death claim, they would need to have an autopsy done. The group knew that doing an autopsy would show that Malloy had not actually died from pneumonia, so the group refused to produce the body. Without producing a body, the group had only received $800 from Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. One source said that Marino kept the majority of the money to recoup the costs of all the alcohol and insurance payments he had been making, but another source said that Murphy and Marino each spent their share on a new suit. Due to the suspicious claims around the insurance policies of the deaths and not producing a body, an investigation was launched into the death of Malloy, and pretty much everyone faced charges. Frank Pasqua, Tony Marino, Daniel Kreisberg, and Joseph Murphy were all convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death in the electric chair. I did read somewhere that the doctor who signed the phony death certificate also served jail time, but I didn't see anything specific on that.
I would hope so.
I'm going to quote the article, the Smithsonian Magazine, because their last line actually cracked me up. They said, "The members of the murder trust were all sent to the electric chair at Sing Sing, which killed them all on the very first try."
Unlike our man Mike.
Yep, unlike our man Mike. So, that is the story of Michael Malloy, aka Rasputin of the Bronx.
See, I joked about the Rasputin thing and you can't kill my man Mike, but in all actuality, what the hell was that guy made of? It was not human. Whatever he was made of was not native human.
See, my mind straight up goes to, I wonder how much of a tab he had racked up during the whole process. Because after 7 months, was there no time during that they were like, oh, we should probably not do this? 7 months is a long time.
Yeah, and they had so many opportunities to stop and just call it off, but...
Maybe we shouldn't. I don't know.
Right? I don't understand how that thought was not there, but I guess the insurance money that they didn't end up getting and jail time was worth it. So, what was the most interesting thing?
That the man survived more than once. What the heck?
I mean, some of the things that he survived, like okay, so yeah, wood alcohol causes blindness. Pure methanol is bad, but like methanol poisoning and like antifreeze poisoning can be treated with ethanol, or like it can block absorption of it. So if you drink enough alcohol, theoretically, sure, you could get past the wood alcohol. But metal shavings and bad sardines and rotten oysters, yeah, I don't really see a way, and glass.
In glass?
I don't really see a way around that. Or and the big one, getting run over by a taxi traveling 50 miles an hour and then backed up over again by it. And you come back
A week later, like, oh yeah, no, I'm fine. I just remember some bright lights and a warm bed.
It's a cat with 9 lives.
That's it. Okay, there's the answer. Malloy was a cat, not a human.
We have cracked the code.
Yep, he was a cat. I solved it. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. As always, you can find any pictures pertaining to this story posted on our Instagram and Twitter at CYRTpod. Be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. If you have a topic suggestion or want us to share a story, send us an email at cyrtpod@gmail.com. Until next time, happy listening.